Hi guys, this is Dormouse03. This is The Evil Within, Akumu difficulty, chapter 15. So this is the last chapter in the game! Woohoo! We have made it! And, you know, it's not too bad, especially if you have the stock of stuff that we've been collecting throughout the game. And so I'm gonna show you all the stuff that I pick up out of here. This is the last time that you're going to visit the asylum. And so anything in the lockers you should pick up, because this is your last opportunity to get any of that stuff. So if you haven't been following the guide up until now, I have found all of the keys. Well, I've gotten all of the keys except for one, the one that you get for killing the Lara boss in Chapter 10. And you don't really need that because there are 2 extra keys, because there are 2 that you find in the lockers themselves. So we were able to open all of the lockers, and I haven't really been using much of the ammunition out of these lockers throughout the game. And so right now I have a large stock of stuff in here to choose from and to pick up and to fill up all of the things that I can fill up. So I'm going to be taking all of that with me because, you know, this is the end of the game and this is the last opportunity that you're going to get to grab this stuff. So there's no reason not to take it. The only reason you would not use this stuff is if you were going to do New Game Plus, and you wanted to leave it for New Game Plus for whatever reason. But if you didn't need it getting through this time, when you didn't have things upgraded the whole way through, you probably won't need it for your New Game Plus playthrough. So anyway, it's just my rationale. And it basically fills up all of my ammo. I think there may be a couple of bolts that I don't have completely full, but for the most part everything is full. And just know that once you leave this area, once you go toward Leslie and, you know, start this next section of the game, you will not be revisiting the asylum unless you do New Game Plus, and then you're in New Game Plus and you're starting all over. So
This way.
the first part of this chapter is very linear. There are no enemies. It's a lot of exposition and going back through areas that you've been through already. And so I'm going to kind of talk about some overall feelings about the game right now, because there's nothing really else to talk about during this part. It's very linear. You follow him, you pick things up, you get a little bit of exposition, and there you go. So I really like this section. I like this chapter because it's kind of the culmination of the parts of this story that make it unique. I think this game, for me, with the way that the story and the level design and the game design all kind of mix together and influence each other, I think it works very, very well. And I think that that is the main reason that this game really works for me. And what I mean by that is, you know, the story is about, and there will be spoilers because, hey, we're at the end of the game. So the thing about this story is that, you know, everybody is connected. Their consciousnesses are connected through this machine. And it's being kind of controlled in a way, or at least you're led to believe that it's being controlled by Ruvik. Now, whether that is 100% true or not, I don't know. It seems like there's a lot more to this story that's left unexplained, and for reasons of, maybe some of that stuff will be explained in the DLC where you play as Kidman. I certainly hope so. I think that would be great.
Beacon, just like Joseph said.
Or left for, possible future iterations if this game gets a sequel, which I really hope it does, because I think it's a really great new survival horror IP. So, and that being said, the questions left unanswered doesn't bother me. It's not like those questions... It doesn't feel like they ripped out parts of the game so that they can sell it to us as DLC or a separate game. I think that there's plenty of content and plenty of story in this game to make it feel like a complete experience. And the DLC is separate. You're playing as a separate character, it's a separate storyline, and it's going to add to what you already know, which I think is the right way to do things. So that's just my opinion thus far. I could have a different opinion of that after the DLC comes out and I play it, because I'm definitely going to play it, because I really, really liked this game. And so, it's possible that once I play that, I might feel like, man, this really should have been in the game, but I really don't think so. I think that that's going to feel like a separate thing and an addition to what's already here, because I feel like what's here is enough to make it feel like a complete story. And it gives you enough so that you sort of can follow what's been happening and come to your own conclusions about some things. And I think that is also a horror trope, It's kind of a thing within these kinds of psychological horror titles, whether it's, books, movies, TV, games. In this genre, part of it is not telling you all the answers, but telling you enough so that you have enough to go on to come to different conclusions, and then different people talking about their different conclusions about things is part of what makes it interesting, at least to me. So I felt like this story hit those notes very well. And so what I'm going to talk about is going to be sort of my interpretation of the story, which by all means is not the definitive answer of what is happening. So just know that. And if you have different theories about things, I would love to hear them and talk about them and discuss things, because I think this has a really, really interesting premise, and I'd love to hear other people's thoughts about that. So that being said, what I'm seeing happening here is that all these people are connected to this stem machine, and Ruvik is potentially in control, or in control more so than other people are. But everybody is sort of contributing to this world, and I like how that aspect of the narrative plays out in the actual gameplay, because the levels that you go through are this sort of conglomeration of Ruvik's memories and other people's memories from within the STEM machine. And I say STEM machine, I don't recall what STEM stands for, so the M in STEM may stand for machine, but so I may be being redundant there, but forgive me, some redundancy. In the STEM, you kind of put your own little touches in there. So like the hospice level in chapter 4, that was influenced by Leslie and the Dr. Jimenez and his brother. So some people sort of add their own things in. It seemed like chapter 11, when you're going through those office buildings and it's the police department, could have been influenced by Sebastian and Kidman and potentially Joseph, wherever the heck he was during that whole time. So different people sort of have some influence on it. It's not like Ruvik is in complete control. And I think that is really good design, because if Ruvik were in complete control, he would just be able to kill you, or he would be able to send forces up against you that you couldn't possibly stop. Because, he's in complete control of the world and what's in it and how it goes. He would send enemies that are invincible and can't be defeated. But because the people who are in the machine as well have some influence over what is going on in their environment, they are able to influence things in such a way that they can fight and they can get away and they can do something to influence what's happening, and therefore have a fighting chance against Ruvik. So it's like, while Ruvik has more control over where you are and who is here and what's happening, and he seems to have a little bit more influence, and that's possibly because he's been in the machine the longest, because it seems like he was the first one really who was in it, and then all of the other people who were then attached to it were attached to him, and so he's the main consciousness, or he's found out how to alter things more than other people have because he's had more experience with the machine and with the confines, and he knows where he is. And I think sometimes knowing where you are, it's like if you know that it's a dream, you know that you can influence it in a way that if you don't know it's a dream, it feels like it's playing out and you can't have any influence over what happens. And so as they start to figure out where they are and what's real and what's not and what they can control and what they can't, I think Ruvik's had more experience with doing that than someone like Sebastian, and so he has more influence over what's happening than Sebastian does. But Sebastian does have influence as well, and more throughout the game it is able to realize that influence, and that all comes to a head here at the end, that I'm going to talk about when we get to the ending section, where things seem to appear out of nowhere, and it may seem like a Deus Ex Machina or something, where that showed up, and that was exactly the thing that you needed, that's so convenient, that's kind of contrived and stupid. Well, in my mind it isn't, because part of the game, pausing for a second because here's our last map fragment. Again, we can't use it right now. Unfortunately, I couldn't remember whether you got back to the asylum after picking up that map fragment or not, but the answer is that you don't. So in order to get that achievement and to get the high-powered sniper rifle and automatic pistol rewards for completing all the map, filling in all the map with all the fragments, you're going to have to do New Game Plus and go in, and when you make it to the asylum, you just go into that room, you press A to interact with the map, and then you'll get your rewards and your achievement. So, in any case, what I was talking about before. I was talking about how the things that happen at the end where you get a couple of things that show up, and it feels like almost like, oh well, that was exactly what you needed. That seems a little very convenient that happened to show up just now, right when you needed it. But to me, it isn't that way, because you have partial control over what's going on. Sebastian has partial control over what is happening and is realizing that he does more and more. And so the fact that he could maybe think like, oh, I need this, and call up this piece of the environment that has shown up in the past and be able to call that into existence at the moment when he needs it is not beyond something that's reasonable. That's not beyond the realm of possibility to me, because he's simply learning how to manipulate this world in a way that benefits him, and he's learning how to do those sorts of things within this machine. This isn't really happening, and I think you have to keep that in mind throughout the entire game, that what is going on screen is part of something that could be likened to a dream. It's a state of consciousness that where, his physical body is not here. And so things being mashed together and coming out of nowhere, and things that are sort of partial memories from one person or another, and people sort of losing their minds and losing their sanity because things seem like they're real, or they feel like they're real, but they aren't. They don't follow the rules of reality that from the real world. They follow the rules of this world that lives in a collective consciousness, or I would say collective unconsciousness. These people are not awake. And so, I don't know. I like that a lot. I like the mashing different environments together, and this level, showing that, you walk through one door and you're in the mansion, and then you walk through another door and you're in the hospital, and you sort of see everything coming together, and it gets progressively this way as you move through the game. Like, the first levels are very contained, and there's not this sense that they are incomplete places, or places that are smashed together. They feel like whole places, whole environments, and more they become fragmented and have other aspects of other things mixed in with them. And that's where you see this, like, breaking down, this control that is imposed upon the world by, I assume Rubik, but possibly someone else, possibly the architects of this machine, the people who are running the experiment or whatnot. That controls start to break down, and so you see more and more things sort of being mashed together, and the world sort of coming apart. And I think that that's really cool design, and I think that that's a really cool way to put the story into the game itself, in a way that, in my opinion, just works really well and adds to it, and I enjoyed that a lot, that aspect of this game. So that tangent is now going to have to stop, because I am going to talk about gameplay now, because this is, I think, the toughest section of this chapter. So this is going to be a really interesting arena here, with multiple levels of places where you can climb and run around, which I really like. I love the design of this area. And you're going to have a bunch of waves of enemies to take care of. And so there's going to be a lot of enemies in this room, and you're going to really need to be able to use your ammo that you've saved up, hopefully, as I have, and be able to use the area to your advantage. So using the places where you have to climb over, using the different levels, and all of that stuff to be able to move around this area in a way that's efficient for you. So I like this left side over here, because the enemies have to either come over that little section that of wall that they'd have to jump over, or come down this corridor. And so now you see we've got some other enemies that have spawned over on the opposite side. This lady, I believe, is dead, but I'm gonna put like 8 shots into her head and then realize, I think she's dead. So, don't worry about conserving ammo right now. I've been harping on about conserving ammo and making sure that you have a lot saved up for this entire playthrough, and this is why. It's so that you can use it here freely and not be worried about running out. There are going to be a couple other fights toward the end of this level. For those, I would recommend saving some sniper rifle ammo and your magnum ammo. But other than that, pull out all the stops here. Use whatever you've got, and use your crowd control weapons. So that looks like I've gotten all of the enemies that spawned in the initial 2 waves, and now you're going to have this Ruvik clone that is going to spawn here in the middle, and I'm going to immediately use a freeze bolt on him because I don't want to mess with him at all. I don't want his little grabby hands of doom after me, and so that is how I choose to take him out. So freeze bolt, I used the freeze bolt on the other enemies there in the middle as well, and that gives me a checkpoint. Those freeze bolts are just great for crowd control people. I cannot stress enough. I have it fully upgraded, and the radius that you get of damage on those enemies is great. And that is why I prioritized upgrading it. So then I'm going to come over here and get into this little corner here. And this corner is actually a good spot, and you'll see me use it right now. I didn't use it the entire time because I found that it was just too easy for something to get by. And if you weren't, right up against that wall on the right, some of the guys with guns could sort of shoot you around the corner, and it was a little bit finicky. So I decided to use that other side with the little wall and alcove as my sort of main spot for the first part. But for this section, this area worked really well. It was great for killing those 3 big guys that drop down, because they will drop down right there. You can use the shock traps to be able to burn them, and that takes care of some enemies that can potentially take a lot of bullets. So I'm going to use some traps right now. This would be, I think, if you wanted to use this side, what I would do. So use shock traps to kind of keep people immobilized. Use your shotgun to lay people down that are getting through, and take them out as best you can. So, I think you can use this side over here. I found the other side more effective for me, but you guys do what works for you. I think this is a perfectly fine strategy, and it's great for right now because the rocket guy can't hit you if you're far enough back, and he does take out quite a few of the haunted that are left on the level, because I believe that woman that I just killed was the last one. So now I'm going to use a couple of sniper shots to get him to move, and I'm moving around because you don't want to stand in one spot for too long, otherwise, he's going to hit you with the rockets, and that's no good. So I'm going to hit him with a few sniper bullets just to put some damage into him, and I have the damage fully upgraded, I think, on all of my weapons. So I'm putting some hurt on some enemies, and at this moment I kind of couldn't decide what exactly I wanted to use to try to kill him, and I didn't want to risk getting too close. And so I ended up deciding that I wanted to use some explosive bolts, and this one right here does the final death blow. So that is that room, guys. Again, I think it's really cool because you can be really mobile. It might take you a few tries to get it completely down to the way that you want to do it, but there are a number of viable strategies for this area. You can kind of camp in one side. You can try to move around and shoot them with, area of effect weapons, so shotguns, freeze bolts, explosive bolts, shock bolts, grenades. That is a perfectly viable strategy as well. You want to be really careful of the enemies with crossbows, because those explosive bolts and that they fire so quickly, can be really irritating. And of course, you also want to look out for the guys with guns. And those are your kind of 2 mains, except for the Ruvik clone and the Sadist. Those are your top priorities. And just using the level to your advantage, and using the walls to put some time between you and the enemies getting to you that they have to spend in that animation of climbing over it. And using your ability to run and jump, because if you run toward an edge, you will jump off of it, and that kind of gives you some extra distance from enemies that otherwise can move very quickly. So anyway, hopefully that gives you guys some ideas for how to do that room. Again, use whatever you're comfortable with and whichever areas work best for you. And I will see you in the next part of this chapter, guys. Thanks for watching.